The black box of accounting and finance. Does anyone benefit from keeping the secret of what goes on in a black box? It's a system that takes an input to process it and produces an output. You might be driving a car and not be very interested in how the combustion engine works, how the transmission system converts the shaft movement into rotational movement of the wheels, or how the circumference of the gears affect the pickup. Unless you are a mechanic, you don't want to know how the black box that your car is operates. But accounting and finance are different, and everyone should have this big picture knowledge of architecture or the algorithm of this black box. The reality is that the black box of accounting and finance is less comparable to a car and more to cooking. Fixing a car is too complex and is best left to professional mechanics and engineers to design a new one. But no matter what a hard selling chartered accountant might say about making sense of your finances and thus having to hire him, it's nothing like that. In fact, it's as simple and manageable as cooking. I am not a cook or even interested in cooking, but when I see my wife and mother cooking, I know what they are doing. For me, yes, it's a black box, the input being the vegetables and the other ingredients, and the output being the food on my plate. The process of taking the ingredients to a meal ready to consume is complex, but it's not incomprehensible to a man like me. In this section, I want to unveil the black box of accounting and finance that I started in the earlier section. I don't think anybody consciously keeps a secret that I'm going to tell you out of your reach or that of the general public. I think it never occurred to anybody to present the knowledge the way it's being done in this chapter using the four-brain learning approach. While the tree analogy helped us understand the whole unified theory of wealth creation, I will now use the analogy of cooking to understand the black box of accounting and finance. Cooking analogy, input, process, and output. So we already know from the earlier section that the input consists of the source documents. They are processed using double entry system, especially debit and credit rule, and the accounting formula that we call the accounting equation. Then journal entries are made into the various ledgers. Finally, we get a trial balance. In short, it's like saying you get all the vegetables, meat, spices, and other ingredients into the kitchen. You cut them, boil them, and mix them. Then, based on the different boiling points and the melting points of the ingredients, you put them in different pots to heat. You then take the spoon and taste whether it's good or bad. If it's too salty, you might add water. If you were expecting a sweet taste and it was not sweet enough, you'd add some sugar. Now that you see the parallel between what I just said about accounting and what I said later about cooking, voila, I have now revealed to you the black box of accounting. It's that simple, yes. However, my mother and wife will disagree because it's their bread and butter. It is also true that I can't cook like them. That said, it's not like they're discouraging me to learn how to cook. However, today's pedagogy of accounting and finance focuses so much on how to cut the vegetables in the correct size and angle, which spices to mix in the perfect proportion, as well as the exact temperature and timing to cook dishes on the stove, that students can see the big picture that this black box of accounting and finance is. Now that you know the rules are complex, yes, as I told you earlier, you can't make mistakes in debit and credit rule, otherwise the whole system will fall apart. You have to follow the counter equation and it must be satisfied at any cost. The trial balance must balance, but it's nothing more than saying that the pieces of the chicken that you cut shouldn't be so big that they can't fit in your mouth or the pot. You shouldn't put so much salt and pepper that you would puke. You shouldn't overcook or undercook, or you'll have a tummy ache. Once you see the black box of accounting in such a disarming way, you'll be able to love your account studies. The financial report, a three-course meal. Next, continuing this analogy of cooking, what do you do after the food is cooked? Well, you put it into serving plates. A normal meal will have three courses: the appetizer, followed by the main course, and the dessert. However, they don't come out of nowhere or out of the blue. They come from the earlier black box of the kitchen. Remember, we brought the ingredients, proceeded, processed them, and the outputs was the food. However, we can't eat out of the big frying pan, can we? We need to be served on a plate. We don't want the salad, the chicken, and the cake on the same plate, do we? That's the exact logic that is used in the black box of finance, which is the next step. It's actually the intersection of finance and accounting, but that's not so important. But trial balance tells us the food tastes as it should. Now we divide the data of all the records that we have gotten from the output of the accounting black box into three parts that we call financial reports. Keep in mind the pattern that I already indicated to you earlier about the three-course meal. So this first course or financial report is the profit or loss statement. The second one is the balance sheet, and the third one is a cash flow statement. You can see it in the diagram above. When you go to a restaurant, you'll ask for the menu or what is in the appetizers and what's in the main course and what are in the dessert. Similarly, the financial report covers various headings. We tell you the monetary value of those headings in that particular company of that at that particular time period. Let's start with the menu of the assets, which is equivalent to the main course. It tells us how much asset we have in the bank. It tells us how much money other people owe us, known as the account receivable. It tells us about our inventory status and how much property in the form of land, vehicles we have, along with various plants and equipment. By looking at the assets in the balance sheet, we know the amount of money we have on the various investments and the value of our trademarks and patents and so on. Still talking about the main course, on the other plate or column called the liability, it tells us how much money we owe to others, known as account payable, the loans that we owe other people or institution. It tells us about the unearned revenues and accrued expenses. Now let's look at the appetizers and let's see what's on the menu. The revenue row of the P&L statement tells us how much we made in that period, known as the sales revenue or service revenue, and interest comes from various investments. On the other plate of the P&L statements, we are told about how much we spent buying goods or the cost of goods, salaries, wages, expenses we incurred, and the rent expense, utilities expense, depreciation expenses, interest expense, marketing and advertising expense, and so on. Before we move on to the dessert, in the main course, there is another plate called equity. This part of the balance sheet tells us how much we have in common stocks, retained earnings, owner's capital, and drawings we have made. Now we come to the third course of the dessert. This one is called the cash flow and outflow, and it tells us how much money came in and out of the operational activities, from investing activities, and from activities in financing. My mother and wife love to present the delicious food that they have cooked in an equally aesthetic way on my plate. In Nepal, the main course consists dal bhat tarkari, meaning lentils, rice, and vegetables. They are put in separate plates or bowls. Similarly, all the above courses are placed in nicely, beautifully structured tables as shown in the diagram. That said, now you have the output of the finance black box. Its input was the output from the accounting black box. In this way, you have been revealed the secret of accounting and finance that you would have known if you stayed in corporate world and became a managed consultant turned counselor turned researcher turned writer like me. I don't want to keep this knowledge to myself, and thus I'm giving away here in my books, so that you as a student can love the essential components of becoming rich. The three principles of finance taste bud. The third black box is the three principles of finance. It's a continuation of the cooking analogy. So the food was served after being prepared. Everything that was cooked was segregated into three main courses. The guest now eats it and gives a verdict on whether the food was good or bad. And that's the three principles of finance do. They are the taste bud and they provide the feedback on how the food was. Our taste buds can detect saltiness, sugariness, and sourness. Similarly, the third black box can detect time value of money, TVM, risk return trade off, RRT, and capital allocation, CA. Since this is only a big picture view of accounting and finance, I will not go into the details, but I will just give you the brief concepts of each taste buds of finance. TVM calculates the future value and present value of money. Basically, it tells us how much our money in all the various headings will be worth in the future as opposed to in the present, and if it's a good or bad as expected. RRT has a formula that calculates the expected return. It's equal to the risk-free return minus the effect of beta, which is a market volatility index on the expected market value. What it means is it calculates how good or bad an investor might turn out given the given nature of economic situation at a particular period of time. Capital allocation tells us about the return on investment by using the value of multiple headings combined into net operating profit after tax, or NOPAT, divided by total assets and turning it into a formula as shown in diagram above. One of the most popular formulas or ratio in CA is called the leverage or the debt to equity ratio, and the payback period, which is equal to the initial investment divided by annual cash flow. So this is the third principle of finance black box, and it tells us how the food that we were served after it was prepared actually tastes. And so the three black boxes of what's in them have been revealed. My mom and wife are not deliberately trying to make cooking seem unsurmountably hard to learn. It's just that I don't love the process of cooking enough to do the grind of learning it. But if I have to, I know to learn and start. And I'll probably produce decent tasting dish. Similarly, I don't think that anybody is conspiring to make accounting and finance feel so hard and complex. But in this section, I try to make the best to demystify the black box. Now you truly know the North Star that you have to follow in order to love the subject of accounting and finance, and that will help you build and sustain your wealth.